The Soviet Winter Offensive of 1941, also known as the Winter Counteroffensive, marked a pivotal moment on the Eastern Front of World War II, as Soviet forces launched a massive counterattack against the invading German armies. Strategic significance. Following the initial successes of Operation Barbarossa, the German invasion of the Soviet Union, the Soviet Winter Offensive played a crucial role in halting the German advance and ultimately turning the tide of the war in favor of the Allies. Planning and preparation. Soviet reorganization. Despite suffering heavy losses in the initial stages of the German invasion, the Soviet Union undertook extensive reorganization and mobilization efforts to bolster its defenses and prepare for a counteroffensive. Strategic objectives. Soviet leaders, including Joseph Stalin and the Stavka, Soviet High Command, formulated a comprehensive plan to launch a coordinated counterattack along multiple sectors of the Eastern Front, aiming to disrupt and repel the German advance. Operation Typhoon and German advances. German Blitzkrieg. Operation Typhoon, the German offensive aimed at capturing Moscow, had made significant advances, with German forces approaching the outskirts of the Soviet capital by late 1941. Soviet defensive stance. Despite fierce resistance, Soviet defenses had been pushed to the brink, with the fate of Moscow hanging in the balance as the harsh winter of 1941 set in. Soviet counteroffensive. Stalingrad Front. The Soviet counteroffensive was launched on multiple fronts, with a focus on relieving pressure on Moscow and repelling the German advance. The Stalingrad Front, under General Georgy Zhukov's command, played a crucial role in the offensive. Operation Uranus. One of the key components of the Soviet counteroffensive was Operation Uranus, a strategic encirclement of German forces at Stalingrad, which resulted in the eventual surrender of the German Sixth Army and marked a turning point in the war. Red Army resurgence. The Soviet Winter Offensive showcased the resurgence of the Red Army, as Soviet forces, bolstered by fresh reinforcements and improved tactics, launched relentless attacks against German positions across the Eastern Front. Key battles and turning points. Battle of Moscow. The Soviet defense of Moscow, despite being pushed to the brink, held firm against repeated German assaults, eventually forcing the German army to halt its advance and retreat. Battle of Stalingrad. The Battle of Stalingrad, a pivotal engagement in the Soviet Winter Offensive, saw intense urban combat as Soviet forces fought to defend the city against the German siege, ultimately leading to the encirclement and defeat of the German Sixth Army. Soviet successes. The Soviet counteroffensive resulted in significant territorial gains, as German forces were pushed back from key strategic objectives and suffered heavy losses in manpower and equipment. Impact and legacy. Halting the German advance. The Soviet Winter Offensive halted the German advance into the Soviet Union, preventing the capture of key cities such as Moscow and Stalingrad and disrupting German plans for a swift victory on the Eastern Front. Boosting Allied morale. The success of the Soviet counteroffensive boosted Allied morale and demonstrated the resilience of the Soviet people and their determination to resist the Nazi invasion.